Hello there, and welcome back. Tonight we begin a journey unlike any you've taken before, into a world that once existed, and one that still might have been, had evolution taken a slightly different turn. The air is thick and warm, the leaves above rustle with unseen wings, and something enormous is stirring in the ferns nearby. You step forward carefully, brushing aside vines as ancient as time itself. But this isn't a fantasy. Long ago, the Earth was home to creatures that crawled, crept, and flew on a scale beyond imagination. As we begin, let's travel back hundreds of millions of years to explore what Earth was truly like, and wonder just for a moment what our world would be if those giants had never disappeared. You step onto the soft, spongy floor of an ancient forest. The air feels heavier than you're used to, not unpleasant, just richer somehow, thick with oxygen and the musky scent of damp wood and growing things. Towering trees, tall as modern buildings, stretch far into the mist above. These aren't familiar oaks or maples. They're giant club mosses and horsetails, their green stalks rising like bamboo poles in dense columns. The sunlight, though bright, filters through in golden sheets, broken by the dense canopy and thick ferns. The year is somewhere around 310 million BCE. You are in the middle of the Carboniferous period, an era that feels otherworldly, yet was once a very real chapter in Earth's story. You hear something overhead, a soft whir, rhythmic and growing louder. Looking up, you spot it. A dragonfly the size of a modern hawk gliding above the trees, its shimmering wings outstretched, nearly 3 feet wide. The light catches on its compound eyes, massive and glinting like polished bronze. This is Meganura, one of the largest known insects ever to live on Earth, and it's not alone. You look down and see movement near your feet. A centipede the length of a car slowly undulating through the fallen leaves. Its countless legs ripple in waves, lifting and placing with mechanical precision. That is Arthropleura, a land-dwelling arthropod longer than any human. Its outer shell shines like wet stone, and each segment moves independently, like a living tank rolling across the forest floor. Everywhere you look, the forest is alive, teeming, pulsing. Beetles as big as dinner plates crawl through the underbrush. Grasshoppers the size of house cats leap between moss-covered boulders. Winged mayflies hover in thick clouds near stagnant pools, their gossamer wings catching the light in glittering flashes. The forest hums not just with life, but with colossal life. The question swirls in your mind. Why? Why were insects so large back then? Why does this world feel so supercharged? It starts with the air you're breathing. The oxygen content during this period was astonishing, reaching levels as high as 35% compared to today's 21%. Every breath fed not just the animals and plants, but allowed cold-blooded creatures like insects to grow to sizes that seem impossible today. Insects don't have lungs like mammals do. They breathe through tiny tubes in their exoskeletons called spiracles. These tubes limit how large they can grow because oxygen has to diffuse through them. But in a world where every breath carried more oxygen, those limits stretched far beyond what we know today. This hyper-oxygenated atmosphere wasn't just a gift. It shaped every part of life. Fire, for instance, was far more dangerous. Forest fires could burn hotter and faster, and even damp foliage could catch flame with ease. But it also meant insects, normally small and vulnerable, could become dominant players in the ecosystem. You walk deeper into the forest and find a clearing near a slow-moving stream. The water is dark and rich with tannins from fallen leaves. Beneath the surface, ancient fish glide, their armor-plated bodies glinting in the light. But even here, insects rule. Giant water bugs paddle through the shallows, their front legs curved like scythes, poised to snatch passing prey. Above, a swarm of prehistoric mosquitoes buzzes, each the size of your thumb. You pull your collar tight. The sounds are mesmerizing. Instead of birdsong, you hear the constant clicking of mandibles, the rustle of massive wings, and the tapping of exoskeletons on bark. The ecosystem feels alien, yet incredibly balanced. Each giant creature filling a niche, part of a vast and complex web of life. You crouch beside a tree stump, marveling at the bark's texture. The rings are tighter, the wood denser, and its surface hosts entire micro-communities of mites, fungi, and beetles. You notice how still everything gets as a new sound begins, a deep thrumming, like the beat of a distant drum. Something is approaching, slow, deliberate. And then it appears. A stag beetle the size of a dog, its horns curved and polished, its armored body dark and iridescent. It moves with the weight and confidence of a predator. Not a hunter, but a creature that knows its place at the top of this insect world. As the beetle moves on and the forest settles, you take a deep breath and glance upward. The light has shifted. The forest is changing. And somewhere ahead lies the answer to a question few have ever dared to ask. What if these giants had never vanished? What if this world had continued, uninterrupted, into today? You take one more step forward. The path ahead narrows, lined by towering ferns and moss-covered roots. The air remains thick and fragrant, a cocktail of sweet rot, earthy spores, and resin from trees long vanished from the modern world. You step carefully, boots sinking softly into the loamy soil, and begin to piece together the mystery of these enormous insects. What allowed them to grow so big? And perhaps more intriguingly, why did that age end? To understand, you must first pause and imagine the physiology of an insect. Unlike mammals or birds, insects don't have lungs. They don't breathe by drawing in air with muscles or expanding chests. Instead, they rely on a network of tiny tubes called tracheae, which extend throughout their bodies. Oxygen diffuses through these tubes and into their tissues. This method is simple and efficient, but only to a point. In today's atmosphere, where oxygen makes up roughly 21% of the air, this system limits the size an insect can reach. There's just not enough oxygen able to diffuse quickly through the trachea to support larger body sizes. But back in the Carboniferous period, oxygen levels were significantly higher, up to 35%. That meant more oxygen could diffuse into their bodies, allowing them to grow larger without suffocating. It wasn't magic or mutation. It was chemistry. The air itself nurtured the giants. You stop at a stream and dip your hand in the water. It's cool, rippling around your fingers with a faint brown tint from the decaying plant matter. Just beneath the surface, you spot a cluster of insects. Primitive mayflies, with wings like stained glass and tails trailing behind like threads. One launches upward in a blur of motion, its wings cutting the air with the delicate grace of a butterfly and the power of a bird. Their life cycles were short, but in this oxygen-rich world, they thrived in numbers and size. But oxygen wasn't the only factor. There were few predators during the early Carboniferous that could challenge these insects. Amphibians had begun to appear, but true reptiles and birds, the major insect predators of today, were still far off on the evolutionary timeline. With little competition and even less threat, insects filled nearly every available niche. You kneel by the side of a mossy boulder, tracing your fingers along its cool, damp surface. Beneath it, a nest of termites busily chews through ancient wood. The sound is faint, like the rustle of parchment, but when you press your ear close, it becomes a chorus. Hundreds of mandibles scraping, crunching, breaking down cellulose. They are the ancient recyclers of the forest, as they are today. But now, you begin to see the problem. Nature, as always, evolves in response to change, and change was coming. As plants grew taller and more efficient at drawing carbon dioxide from the air, They began to tip the atmospheric balance. Giant trees and ferns acted like living pumps, reducing CO2 and increasing oxygen for a time, but eventually triggering a cascade of cooling. As Earth's climate cooled and swamps began to dry, many of the dense forests that had created the oxygen-rich atmosphere began to disappear. And as that oxygen level dropped, so did the ceiling on insect size. But that wasn't all. New creatures were arriving. Small at first, then faster, smarter, hungrier. Reptiles began to dominate. Then came birds, mammals, and a wide variety of predators with teeth, claws, and warm blood. These animals could move faster, cover more territory, and adapt to changing climates in ways insects could not. You stand in a clearing now, watching the sky darken as clouds roll in, the scent of coming rain on the wind. Thunder rumbles faintly, but the atmosphere feels different now. It's as if you're watching the last chapter of an era unfold in slow motion. The giants haven't gone extinct yet, but you know their days are numbered. From behind a log, you catch sight of something small, quick, and unfamiliar. A lizard, sleek and low to the ground, its eyes scanning the foliage. It darts forward suddenly and snatches a large beetle in its jaws. The beetle flails, kicks, then goes still. You've just witnessed the early tension of what will become one of evolution's greatest battles: insect versus vertebrate. Over millions of years, this battle would tip in favor of the warm-blooded. The tracheal system that once gave insects an edge now became their limit. Vertebrates developed lungs, circulatory systems, even intelligence. Insects, for all their complexity, remained bound by diffusion. You imagine the world as it would soon become: forests less dense, oxygen more balanced, predators more capable. A world where insects could no longer dominate in size, and instead began their long retreat into the shadows, under leaves, beneath bark, into the corners of the world. And yet, even as their bodies shrank, their numbers exploded. Insects diversified wildly, finding new shapes, new colors, and new tactics. They became masters of stealth, camouflage, poison, cooperation. Ants formed complex societies. Bees learned to dance and farm. Termites built palaces from mud. But the giants? They faded, until only fossils and whispers remained. You press your hand against the rough bark of a tree, feeling the vibration of distant wings, as if the forest remembers. Somewhere deep in your mind, the question returns: what if it had gone differently? What if the oxygen levels had stayed high, or reptiles hadn't gained dominance? What if, instead of disappearing, the age of giant insects had never ended? You take a step back, leaves crunching softly underfoot. The shadows are deepening, and the air begins to shimmer, not with heat, but with imagination. You're about to find out what that alternate Earth might be like. The forest around you begins to shift. It's subtle at first, the canopy thinning slightly, the air turning crisper, less humid. The once dense cloud of insects seems sparser now, and the hum of wings is quieted to a background murmur. You feel it in your lungs, too. The atmosphere isn't as thick, as rich. Something is changing. You're still in the ancient world, but time is flowing forward, bringing with it a transformation that will alter the planet forever. You emerge into a new stretch of forest, one more open, with younger trees spaced farther apart. Ferns give way to smaller, faster-growing plants, and where once dragonflies cast vast shadows over the undergrowth, now only flickers of movement remain. You look up. A hawk-sized meganeura still drifts through the air, but it seems slower, more labored than before. Its flight is still graceful, but its energy feels strained. This is the beginning of the end. The Carboniferous period is waning, and with it, the high-oxygen atmosphere that once nurtured Earth's insect titans. Scientists believe that the vast burial of plant material, the very source of today's coal, caused a drawdown of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Less carbon meant less greenhouse effect, and soon Earth began to cool. Swamps dried, wetlands shrank, Fires burned away large tracts of vegetation that had once blanketed the planet. With fewer plants breathing oxygen into the air, atmospheric oxygen levels began to drop. From a peak near 35%, they slowly crept down toward levels more familiar to us today. But for insects, this was catastrophic. You crouch beside a fallen tree, its bark riddled with holes. Once, massive beetles may have lived here. Now, the tunnels are smaller, their inhabitants less imposing. You hear the clicking of a bark beetle beneath the wood, still alive, still adapting, but no longer a giant. The ecosystem is recalibrating. The rules are changing. You walk deeper into the woods and come upon a pond, once teeming with massive mayflies and predatory nymphs. Now, the water is cooler, the shoreline receding. You spot smaller insects dancing on the surface, lighter and quicker. Around the edges, creatures you haven't seen before stalk the shadows. Amphibians, early tetrapods, with slick skin and wide eyes. They breathe both air and water and slip silently through the reeds. You kneel and observe. One lunges, snatching a grasshopper in a blink. It is not the size of the prey that matters now, but the predator's speed and precision. The balance of power has shifted. And then you hear something new, a sound that doesn't belong to insects or amphibians. A high-pitched screech, followed by the crackling of brush. You turn and catch sight of something scaly, lean, and upright. It scurries across the clearing, claws clicking on the dry leaves, tail whipping behind. A small, fast-moving reptile. Reptiles, the future rulers of Earth. Cold-blooded but more efficient at moving through varied terrain, better equipped for drier conditions and able to lay eggs on land. Their arrival marks the beginning of new evolutionary pressure and new dangers for the giants of the insect world. You stand in stillness, watching the reptile vanish into the undergrowth. It is small now, unremarkable, but its descendants will one day grow into the ruling class of dinosaurs, and eventually, mammals. It is a quiet moment, but one filled with profound weight. The insects haven't gone without a fight. Many adapted, downsizing their bodies, changing their behaviors. Some took to the air in greater numbers, others burrowed deeper into the earth. Some developed mimicry, camouflage, toxins. The smaller the insect, the more surface area compared to its volume, a shape better suited for the new atmosphere. Nature favors what can survive, not necessarily what can dominate. You pass through the next grove of trees. There's less canopy now, more light, but fewer shadows for the giants to hide in. In the distance, you hear the flapping of dragonfly wings, still large but far from majestic. Meganeura is one of the last of its kind. Soon it will vanish entirely. And so will Arthroplura, the titanic millipede that once roamed the forest floor like a slow-moving freight train. Without high humidity and thick vegetation, its exoskeleton will dry, crack, and no longer support its size. Its descendants will grow no larger than a man's finger. You glance down at a nearby bush and spot a familiar shape. A beetle, still armored, still brilliant with iridescent sheen. It scuttles quickly, disappearing under a rock. Smaller, faster, more efficient. The giants haven't died out. They've transformed. You reach the edge of a cliff now, and the view spreads wide. The forest gives way to open plains, the birth of new habitats, deserts, grasslands, savannas. These places don't favor huge insects. They favor quick feet, warm blood, and teeth. Birds evolve from dinosaurs. Mammals multiply. The age of insects is over. Or is it? Because, as you look closer, you realize something remarkable. Insects remain everywhere. On every leaf, under every stone, inside every tree. They are not giants anymore, but they are legion. And despite everything, they are thriving. You watch an ant trail snake its way along the dirt. Each ant is small, barely the size of a grain of rice, but together they form an army. You smile. The giants may have fallen, but their legacy lives on. Still, the question lingers like mist in the early morning light. What if that world had never changed? What if the oxygen had remained high? If reptiles had not taken over? If no mass extinction had swept through the forests and reset the evolutionary clock? You step forward, and the world shifts once more. You're no longer in the past. You're entering a new realm now, one of imagination. A world where giant insects never vanished. A place where nature followed a different path. What would that world look like? Let's find out. The air grows thick again. Warmer. Heavier. But this time, not because you've stepped back in time. No. This is a different kind of forest. One that never truly existed in our world, but might have. You step through a curtain of vines and into a realm shaped not by what was, but by what might have been. Imagine this. The oxygen levels never dropped. The massive burial of plant matter during the Carboniferous period didn't cause a crash in carbon dioxide. Instead, the earth remained lush, wet, and verdant. Swamps stretched from pole to pole, and the ancient plants, club mosses, ferns, and giant horsetails, continued to pump oxygen into the sky. The air you breathe now is close to 35% oxygen, and it carries a sharpness you've never quite felt before, as if every breath stirs your blood with vibrant clarity. In this world, insects never downsized. They never retreated into the cracks and crevices of forests. Instead, they evolved forward, up, out, beyond. They became the dominant class of animals on land, in the air, and even in the shallows of the oceans. You are now standing in a fully realized alternate Earth, one ruled not by mammals or birds, but by giant insects in all their unimaginable forms. The first thing you notice is the sound, not the faint rustling of small creatures, but a deep, constant drone that fills the forest like the hum of distant machinery. Wings flap in great synchrony above you, some as wide as banners, moving slowly through the air like floating tapestries. A massive moth the size of a sailboat glides above the canopy, its velvety wings catching the golden sunlight and scattering it like powdered gold across the treetops. The trees here are adapted to the insects, not the other way around. Their trunks are thicker, bark harder, with some developing surfaces that repel or attract certain insect species. Bright blooms stretch 10 feet wide, evolved not for hummingbirds, but for pollinators the size of wolves, bees with black and yellow stripes as broad as your arm. You walk a winding path, each step soft on mosses, alive with movement. A beetle as big as a coffee table clambers over a log beside you, its shell a deep emerald that shifts to bronze in the shifting light. It pays you no attention. You're small here, unimportant. The insects rule this world. There are no birds overhead, no hawks or eagles. Instead, wasps patrol the skies like silent sentinels. You spot one circling slowly above a ridge, its abdomen curled under in readiness. When it dives, it disappears behind a curtain of trees, and moments later the forest ripples with motion. Something, or someone, has been caught. But even in this world, not all insects are predators. Many are gardeners, caretakers of the forest. Towering ants tend to fungal beds inside tree hollows the size of small cottages. You watch as they carry leaves and dead wood up the trunk of a great tree, feeding their garden with quiet efficiency. Their heads are large, jaws powerful, but their movements are careful, precise. You reach a clearing where a swarm of butterflies has gathered. Each one is as large as a kite, their wings patterned in hypnotic swirls of red, blue, and black. When they take off all at once, the sky is filled with color, and the breeze from their wings lifts your hair. It's beautiful, but there's an edge to it, a rawness. Life here is powerful, but not gentle. The ecosystem thrives, but it is not built for fragile things. You pass under a woven canopy of silk. Not from a spider, but from a massive silkworm colony that lives suspended between tree trunks, like a village of weavers. The strands are as thick as rope, glowing with the filtered sun, and insects travel back and forth along them like tightrope walkers. Everywhere you go, life feels scaled up. The plants are taller, the sounds deeper, the creatures grander. Even the soil feels richer, alive with tiny tremors from burrowing beetles and armored millipedes the length of garden hoses. You come to the edge of a cliff where the forest falls away into a wide valley. Below, a great herd of herbivorous insects moves slowly through the underbrush. Colossal walking sticks, their legs like stilts, shifting gracefully through groves of giant mushrooms. Wingless grasshoppers graze in tight-knit groups, their antennae sweeping the air in slow, synchronized waves. And then you see the predators. A mantis, easily the size of a full-grown man, emerges from a patch of reeds and begins to stalk. Its limbs are folded tight against its chest, its movements silent, precise. It's not hunting you. Not yet. But your skin prickles just the same. This world isn't built with you in mind. Here, humans are prey, or at best, afterthoughts. You turn to continue your journey, the distant sound of mandibles clashing echoing through the trees. In this alternate Earth, evolution has rewarded insects with more than size. Some species have grown complex brains, enhanced vision, improved mobility. Others have evolved social structures that rival our own. There are hives and colonies that sprawl for miles, pulsing with the rhythm of collective decision-making, not unlike cities. Some even glow at night, lit by coordinated flashes of bioluminescent communication. It's easy to forget where you came from. The modern world fades as you walk deeper into this insect-ruled realm. But in your mind, the thought flickers again. If humans had evolved alongside these giants, what would that look like? Could we coexist? Would we be their allies, their prey? Or would we have become something else entirely? You step into a shadowy grove, lit from above by a flickering curtain of fireflies the size of lanterns. The path ahead twists into the roots of an enormous tree, and somewhere within, the next chapter of this imagined world awaits. You descend slowly along the root path, spiraling deeper beneath the forest canopy. The light grows dim, filtered through layers of leaves and wings, but your eyes adjust to the green-tinted twilight. This is the beating heart of a giant insect world, an ecosystem built not for mammals, but for insects, scaled to the size of humans or larger. Here, every branch is a thoroughfare, every burrow a city gate, and every clearing a theater, where life unfolds in patterns far older than we can remember. You pause on a wide moss-covered stone and survey the valley below. It is not empty wilderness. It is organized chaos. A living web of interactions that stretches in all directions. In this world, insects have claimed nearly every ecological niche. Not just as individuals, but as vast, interdependent networks. To your right, a colony of leafcutter ants moves in endless procession. But these are not the ants of your backyard. These are titanic workers, each the size of a small dog, their mandibles gleaming as they shear through ferns and saplings. They carry their leafy prizes back to a massive mound, a towering structure of earth, resin, and chewed bark that rises nearly 2 stories high. It's not a simple nest, but a multi-chambered fortress with cooling vents, fungus farms, and nurseries buried deep inside. Nearby, a swarm of giant bees dances in mid-air. Their bodies shimmer with gold and black, fur thick like moss, legs weighed down with pollen gathered from flowers the size of car wheels. These bees aren't just pollinators, they're ecosystem engineers. You watch as one lands on a massive bloom and presses its legs to the petals. In response, the flower pulses gently, releasing a warm mist of scent that draws even more bees in. The air hums, not with chaos, but with purpose. You wade through a shallow stream, careful not to disturb the glimmering insects skimming the surface. Water striders the size of dinner plates dart from bank to bank, their legs barely dimpling the surface tension. Beneath the water, aquatic nymphs, some as long as your arm, lurk beneath lily pads the width of tables, waiting for prey. Just beyond the stream is a low wetland basin, where the ground squelches under your feet. Towering reeds sway gently in the wind, and among them you spot a colony of burrowing beetles. These insects don't fly. They dig, sculpting the mud into towering mounds and curved tunnels reinforced with silk. The beetles emerge one by one, their horns polished, their carapaces painted in earthy reds and blacks. Each one drags chunks of decaying matter into the nest, feeding not only themselves, but the fungal gardens they've cultivated below ground. This world runs on cycles of decay and renewal. Nothing is wasted. Fallen trees are quickly colonized by wood-boring insects that reduce them to mulch in weeks. Dead leaves become scaffolding for larvae nurseries. Even dung serves a purpose, collected by enormous dung beetles who roll it into perfect spheres and bury it deep to nourish their offspring. Farther up the hillside, a different community thrives. Weaver ants, massive and quick, build suspended cities in the canopy using silk and leaves. You watch as 100 ants, working in harmony, fold a large leaf with coordinated pulls and grips, sealing the edges with threads produced by their larvae. The result is an aerial chamber, lightweight, weatherproof, and alive with activity. Scouts race along bridges of silk between trees, while guards patrol the perimeter with flared mandibles. It's not all harmony, of course. You hear a scream. Sharp, shrill, unmistakably mammalian. You look up just in time to see a small creature, perhaps a rodent, snatched mid-leap by a massive ambush predator. A trapdoor spider the size of a manhole cover had been lying in wait beneath the leaves, and now its prey is pooled beneath the soil in an instant. Silence follows. Then the leaves settle once more. In this world, insects sit high in the food chain. They are herbivores, carnivores, omnivores, and scavengers. They fill the roles of pack hunters, solitary stalkers, aerial predators, and filter feeders. Butterflies, with wingspans wider than your outstretched arms, float lazily through sunbeams, their proboscises like curling straws longer than your leg. They sip nectar from tree blooms and exude pheromones that hang in the air like invisible rain. You make your way into a sunlit clearing, where a circle of tall grasses sways gently. This place feels different, less wild, more cultivated. You step closer and realize you've stumbled into a kind of insect orchard. Enormous cicadas cling to bark, their songs deep and rhythmic, vibrating through the trees like drums. On the ground, giant woodlice feed on compost piles, while above, praying mantises rest in the shadows of high branches, surveying the world with triangular heads that turn ever so slightly as you pass. Everywhere you look, you see relationships. Pollinators and plants, predators and prey, decomposers and the dead. This ecosystem is stable, ancient, and entirely self-sustaining. Insects haven't just survived, they've perfected balance. Each species plays its role in a choreography that has been fine-tuned over millions of years. But you also begin to wonder, what would it be like to live here as a human? Would we build fences to keep the beetles out, or roads to follow the trails of ants? Would we be farmers of silkworms, or riders on the backs of giant dragonflies? Could we live alongside such creatures, or would we forever fear their size, their strength, their unknowable minds? The sun begins to dip behind the ridge, casting golden shadows through the branches. The forest sings, not with bird song, but with chirps, clicks, whirs, and deep insect harmonies. It's both alien and oddly familiar. You sit for a moment, watching a column of light catch on the translucent wings of a damselfly that hovers, still as a sculpture, just above the stream. And then you hear it, the faint rumble of something enormous moving through the trees. A reminder, this world isn't done showing you what it can become. The forest floor darkens as the sun slips behind the dense foliage overhead. Shafts of golden light pierce through in narrow beams, illuminating floating pollen, and the occasional drifting wing. You descend from the mossy hill and return to where most life in this world is lived, at ground level, where the air smells of soil, decay, and blooming life. Here, in the undergrowth, the world of giant insects comes into full, humbling view. Your footfalls are soft against the thick carpet of leaf litter. But despite your caution, you feel vibrations. Subtle at first, a rhythm like a distant drum. Then stronger. The ground quivers gently beneath your boots. You crouch low, steadying yourself with a hand on a twisted root, and wait. From between two giant ferns it emerges, a praying mantis. Its head alone is nearly the size of yours. Long, angular arms fold tightly against its chest, like blades sheathed in anticipation. Its exoskeleton glistens a pale green, textured with ridges like armor. Two huge, multifaceted eyes regard you with an unnerving stillness, tilting ever so slightly. You freeze, unsure whether it sees you as threat, curiosity, or prey. But it doesn't strike. With deliberate grace, it steps past you, each motion as precise as clockwork. Its feet press lightly into the soil, and with a flutter of translucent wings, it lifts itself onto a low-hanging branch and vanishes silently into the foliage. You exhale, slowly. This world is not one of constant violence. Life at ground level is about balance, about territory, pattern, and patience. You follow the path it left behind, noticing now the many signs of insect life writ large. Near a fallen log, a massive centipede slides out from beneath the bark, its orange body segmented and armored, antennae twitching as it tastes the air. You step back instinctively. This creature is a predator, its venomous fangs hidden beneath its smooth, narrow head. It glides across the leaves like a river of muscle and chitin, disappearing into the shadows. Closer to your feet, smaller life bustles. A line of ants, still enormous by modern standards, carries food and twigs along a beaten path. Each ant is the length of your forearm, moving in coordinated precision. They pay no attention to you. Their world is ordered, focused, directed by purpose alone. You wonder what messages travel invisibly between them. What signals pass from antenna to antenna in the dark? You kneel to examine the root system of a tree and find a complex structure of tunnels winding into the soil. Beetles, some the size of dinner plates, crawl in and out with detritus and leaf fragments, expanding their subterranean homes. You brush your hand over the entrance and feel a warm, damp breeze flow outward, the breath of a living colony below. A few paces away, a gentle rustling turns your attention to a thicket of tall grasses. You part the stalks slowly, revealing a burrow entrance shored up with small rocks and webbing. A cricket the size of a rabbit pokes its head out, long antennae twitching cautiously. Its dark eyes shine with reflected light. Behind it, you hear the faint chirp, a low, resonant sound like the strum of a cello string. It isn't alone. A pair of crickets emerges behind it, moving slowly through the grass in search of food. You remain perfectly still as they pass, their presence so large, so close, that you can feel the warm air they stir with their movement. These are not creatures to be feared, only respected. Not far from this peaceful moment, however, danger still lurks. You hear a rustle, more frantic this time. A beetle dashes across the path, pursued by a robber fly, its long legs extended, wings buzzing with urgency. The fly grabs the beetle mid-run and pierces its carapace with needle-sharp mouthparts. The beetle flails, then stills. The predator feeds, and then lifts off into the air once more. You notice how every inch of this world is alive with interaction. A tree trunk, seemingly inert, is in fact a stage for 100 dramas. Weaver beetles crawl along its bark, laying eggs inside small crevices. A phasmid, a stick insect so well camouflaged that it seems part of the branch, shifts ever so slightly, its long limbs swaying with the breeze to complete the illusion. You almost missed it entirely. The ground beneath your feet softens, and as you tread farther, you find yourself in a sunken glade. Pools of standing water reflect the canopy above. At the center, a cluster of mushrooms as tall as children glows faintly, their bioluminescence attracting buzzing clouds of flying insects. Fireflies dart among them, blinking with synchronized light that seems to pulse in rhythm with the hum of the forest. Life at ground level is slower here, not because the creatures are slow. They are agile, powerful, and aware, but because the scale of motion is different. An ant traveling across a branch is not a momentary action, but a journey. A beetle turning over a fallen leaf reveals not just prey, but an entire underworld of smaller inhabitants. You settle against a tree and watch a group of pillbugs navigate a rotting log. Each one is as big as a grapefruit, curling defensively when startled, then unfolding like tiny mechanical sculptures. You see larvae nestled in the bark crevices, glowing slightly as they squirm in search of food. Everything here has a rhythm, and the deeper you observe, the more it reveals. At ground level, you begin to feel the humility of being small. Even if your body is the same size it has always been, your place in this world is different. You are no longer the largest, the fastest, or the most intelligent species in sight. You are one part of a dense, breathing tapestry, surrounded on all sides by creatures whose societies, instincts, and systems rival your own in complexity. And as the breeze picks up, stirring the grasses and lifting dust motes into the air, you find yourself looking forward again. What lies beyond the trees? What flies above this insect world? If the ground is so alive, what must the sky be? You rise and begin to climb the slope at the edge of the glade, drawn toward a sound that pulses from above. The deep, rhythmic beat of wings larger than any bird you've ever known. You crest the rise slowly, pushing through thick fern fronds as the forest thins and gives way to open sky. A cool gust brushes your face, not from the weather, but from the shadow that passes overhead. You look up. High above, something moves. Not fast like a jet or sharp like a bird, but wide and steady, its wings extended in effortless glide. The silhouette is unmistakable. A dragonfly. But this one has wings that stretch nearly 3 meters from tip to tip. It circles slowly, like a hawk surveying its territory, then tilts one veined wing and drifts down through the thermals. The sunlight flashes on its compound eyes, each one reflecting the landscape below in a kaleidoscope of detail. This is a titan of the skies, a relic of Earth's past, made permanent in this alternate world. You crouch near a ledge, peering out across a vast valley. The skies are alive with flight. Dozens, no, hundreds of giant insects fill the air like balloons in a parade, each moving on its own current, wings slicing through the wind with hypnotic rhythm. Moths the size of tents flutter with velvet softness between treetops. Beetles with hard, glossy wing casings clack as they open mid-flight, revealing membranous wings that beat like high-speed fans. You spot a squadron of butterflies, their wings like stained glass windows, fluttering in a shifting cloud of blue, orange, and black. Below them, a group of wasps maneuvers with military precision, darting between gaps in the canopy, their stingers gleaming like obsidian daggers. The air is filled with sound. Not the roar of engines or the calls of birds, but the organic, pulsing chorus of wing beats. Some hum low and deep, like cello strings resonating in wood. Others buzz sharply, vibrating the very air around you. Together they form a layered symphony, the music of a sky ruled not by feathers, but by chitin and instinct. You look closer and begin to see the rules that govern this airborne world. The highest layers of sky belong to the dragonflies, fast, agile, and aggressive. They own the upper thermals, diving only when needed, then rising again on powerful strokes. Lower down, moths drift more lazily, feeding on high blossoms that open only in daylight. Still lower, beetles and grasshoppers leap from branch to branch in clumsy arcs, gliding rather than flying. flaring their wings only when they must. And then there are the predators. You spot one now. A mantid fly, a bizarre cross between a mantis and a lacewing. It hovers silently, then dives, snatching a smaller insect mid-air in its sickle-like forelegs before vanishing into the canopy. A few moments later, its discarded prey spirals slowly downward, wings limp, like a lost leaf. Flight in this world is not just a method of travel. It is dominance, survival, strategy. You step back as a gust of wind pushes through, stirred not by breeze, but by a passing hover, a massive, cicada-like creature, its segmented body suspended between transparent wings that shimmer like oil on water. It lands briefly on a branch the width of a telephone pole, vibrates its abdomen, and releases a call that rattles your ribs. Even the trees seem to respond. Some have evolved to sway with the constant vibration, growing flexible wind-adapted limbs that bend under the weight of landing insects. Others have developed ridged bark that acts like natural perches, with sap-filled grooves to attract or trap their visitors. You imagine what it would be like to live in this world as a human. Could we ever master the skies? Or would we remain grounded, always watching with awe and caution? Would we build towers tall enough to match these flyers? Could we bond with them? Perhaps even ride them? It's not far-fetched. You notice a human-sized platform built from woven vines and resin, hanging from one of the upper trees. It sways gently in the wind, a landing perch. In this alternate Earth, humans may have developed a relationship with some of the insect species, not taming them like horses, but cooperating with them, using their predictable migration routes, their instinctive navigation, their strength. You watch as a pair of beetles, each the size of a motorcycle, lift off from a nearby ridge, wings blurring into invisibility. Their legs dangle as they rise, their shadows trailing across the forest floor. In their wake, a swirl of pollen and seed drift upward, carried to distant trees. Pollination is no longer a gentle breeze, but a grand event, like the passing of a parade. Up here, the danger is less immediate, but the stakes are higher. A fall from this height could be fatal, and among the flyers, disputes are swift and brutal. You see a confrontation now. Two male bees spiraling in tight loops, colliding mid-air with dull thuds. The victor presses onward toward a flowering tree. The loser falls, dazed, to the underbrush below. You shield your eyes against the sun and take one last look at the skies above. A formation of dragonflies coasts across the golden light, casting enormous shifting shadows on the valley below. Their paths intersect, overlap, and then split again. An elegant, ever-changing dance in the heavens. The sky is no longer a quiet blue dome. It is a kingdom teeming with movement, color, and noise. A place where gravity is negotiated, not accepted. A place where life, scaled to enormous proportions, has taken to the air in defiance of the limits nature once imposed. And as you turn from the cliff and begin your descent back into the forest, one question rises to the front of your mind. If this is what the skies have become, how could humans have possibly adapted to live among these giants? That answer, you sense, lies just beyond the next ridge. You make your way down from the wind-swept ridgeline, back into the dense embrace of the forest below. The sky behind you buzzes with life, but now your thoughts drift toward a different mystery, your own place in this world. If Earth had remained a realm of giant insects, what would that mean for humans? Would we have survived? And if so, how would we have changed? You walk along a sunken path, worn smooth by generations of footsteps, not just of insects, but of something bipedal. The trail is lined with carved stones, etched not with writing, but with simple pictographs. A beetle, a tree, a spiral pattern representing a wing beat. The message is clear. Humans exist in this world too. But they are different. You come upon a clearing where a small settlement nestles between the roots of colossal trees. The homes are not built upward but downward, dug into the earth or grown into living wood, reinforced with silk, bark, and stone. Roofs are domed with hardened resin, shining amber in the filtered sunlight. At the center, A communal fire pit smolders, the smoke trailing gently through a lattice of leaves above. A group of humans gathers nearby. They are small, not tiny, but leaner, shorter than those of your world. Evolution in a world of giant insects has shaped them to be compact, agile, quiet. Their clothing is made from woven plant fibers and shed insect wings, layered for protection and mobility. Some carry tools fashioned from mandibles and exoskeleton fragments, lightweight yet strong, chitin instead of metal. One person is seated beneath a canopy of leaves, carefully polishing a dragonfly wing. The wing is as long as their body, semi-transparent and veined like stained glass. It will likely be used to build or to signal. In this world, technology is natural, not manufactured. The people live in close relationship with their environment, mimicking its patterns rather than reshaping it. Children chase one another around the thick trunk of a tree, laughing softly but always glancing upward. Alert, aware. Overhead, a group of wasps flies low, their shadow gliding across the ground like the flick of a giant fan. The children scatter beneath the branches until the danger passes. In this world, vigilance is instinct. You follow a footpath leading out of the village and deeper into cultivated land, if it can be called that. It's not a field in rows or squares, but a carefully managed patchwork of growth. Clusters of edible fungi rise from hollow logs. Vines grow upward on carved trellises, their fruit hidden beneath protective leaves. Giant leaf hoppers are corralled in a woven fence, domesticated perhaps for their eggs, silk, or even transportation. You watch as one of the villagers approaches a group of beetles harnessed to a low cart. The beetles respond to gentle touches and scent-based commands, shifting their armored legs in unison. These are working animals, not wild, but not entirely tame either. The relationship is one of cooperation, not dominance. The thought settles quietly in your mind. Humans in this world did not conquer nature. They adapted to it. You imagine how evolution might have proceeded to allow this harmony. Lungs become more efficient, heart slower, metabolism adapted for high oxygen intake without harm, skin toughens slightly to resist the biting insects. Hair becomes finer, perhaps with patches that mimic insect patterns as camouflage. Night vision improves to navigate dense forest floors. Hearing sharpens to detect the wing beats of creatures overhead. Language evolves to incorporate gesture, scent, and rhythm, tools for communication in a world of sensory complexity. Human culture in this alternate Earth is deeply interwoven with insect life. Festivals are held during mass migrations. Songs mimic the patterns of cicada calls. Entire calendars are based on the cycles of metamorphosis. Architecture mirrors the hexagons of hives and the chambers of nests. Art is ephemeral, made of web, pollen, and colored dust, to be admired until it's carried away by the wind. But adaptation hasn't made life easy. You pass by a watch post where a pair of villagers stand with long poles tipped in sharp chitin, eyes scanning the forest. There are still predators, not wolves or big cats, but mantises that hunt with terrifying precision, or spiders the size of bulls that build massive snares between trees. Villagers whisper of disappearances. Paths are walked only in groups. Children are taught early to identify warning pheromones in the air or the glint of trapdoor webbing on the forest floor. You wonder, would humans have developed civilization in the same way? Cities in the modern sense might not exist. Instead, there would be networks, clusters of communities connected by underground tunnels, treetop paths, or gliding routes assisted by cooperative insects. Trade would rely on insect couriers. Knowledge might be stored not in books, but in memory, passed orally or through scent-encoded objects. You arrive at a wide platform woven between three massive trees. Suspended above it is a winged glider, not of modern metal and bolts, but crafted from the wings of deceased beetles, their natural curves forming aerodynamic lifts. You watch as two humans strap themselves in, speak a command, and are lifted into the air by a pair of giant hoverflies. Their silhouettes vanish into the golden canopy, headed for the next village. In this world, flight is not an achievement of machines, but of relationship. a blending of instinct and adaptation, biology and trust. You remain for a moment, sitting at the edge of the platform as the sun begins to dip once more. You imagine your own body smaller, quicker, adapted to fit this world. You imagine the skills you'd need, tracking by scent, reading the tremble of leaves, hearing the layered hum of wings as easily as voices. You imagine living not in separation from the natural world, but as part of it. And then you feel it. A deep vibration, not from the earth, but from something approaching in the sky above. You stand slowly, heart steady, and turn your eyes upward. Whatever is coming, it is large, familiar, and different. You take a breath, step away from the platform, and prepare to witness something perhaps even more astonishing. The rise of insect intelligence. The hum grows louder. Not the wild, discordant buzz of a swarm, but a rhythmic pulse, a low, steady vibration that seems to echo through the trees, into the soil, and into your chest. You stand perfectly still on the forest floor, eyes searching the sky for the source. Then, just above the canopy, you see them. A formation of insects gliding in perfect synchronization. They are large, mantis-like in body, but with long, feathery antennae and radiant markings along their thoraxes. Each wing beat is mirrored across the group, forming a dance in the air that is not random, but deliberate. You watch as they bank in unison, then descend slowly toward a clearing ringed by tall saplings and shimmering with morning dew. They do not crash or scatter. They land, gently, precisely, almost ceremonially. And then, from the edges of the clearing, others emerge. Workers, drones, smaller individuals who begin tending to the flyers, checking their wings, carrying food. There's no panic, no chaos, only structure, order, purpose. This is not just instinct. It is society. You step forward, slowly, staying hidden behind a curtain of moss. Your heart races not with fear, but awe. Here, in this world ruled by giant insects, evolution has done something extraordinary. It has not only preserved the size and dominance of insects, it has pushed them further. Some species have grown more than physically. They have become intelligent. Not in the way we define intelligence, perhaps, not books and buildings, but in systems, memory, cooperation, communication, and most of all, intention. You observe the clearing as it transforms. Drones bring materials to the edge, leaves, resin, silk, and the builders begin. They construct scaffolding in spiral patterns, like shells or fractals, while above them other flyers hover and signal using flashes of bioluminescent light. You realize that this entire structure is being built collaboratively, according to some internal blueprint. There is no overseer shouting commands, yet everything fits. This is hive logic. You recall what we know about ants, bees, and termites in your own world, how they build nests, allocate labor, raise young, and solve complex problems together. But now, with bodies the size of humans and brains magnified by their sheer scale, those patterns have grown more intricate. You begin to see evidence of learning, not just reaction, but strategy. One insect, marked with bold red coloring and 3 symmetrical eye spots on its thorax, seems to serve as a coordinator. It watches from an elevated perch, using subtle changes in scent, wing posture, and vibration to direct others. A slow waggle of its antennae sends workers to a new location. A sharp buzz halts a group before they collide. This isn't random movement. It's leadership. You begin to wonder, do they remember? Do they plan? You creep closer and find, tucked under a high shelf of bark, a complex mural made of pollen, resin, and layered petal fragments. It depicts a migration. Dozens of flying insects crossing a mountain range, guided by the stars. The style is abstract but unmistakable. This is not merely decoration. It is history. Record. Art. You realize with a quiet thrill that this society might have passed its knowledge between generations, not through words, but through patterns, through symbols, through pheromone markers and repeated structures. Perhaps their stories are told in movement or stored in scent trails that spiral inward like memories encoded in the earth. You observe a young larva, far larger than a child, being fed carefully by two adults. They alternate food types, measure the temperature with leg movements, then adjust the silk around the chamber. This is not just instinct, it's nurturing. The idea begins to bloom in your mind. Perhaps insect intelligence isn't individualistic like ours. Perhaps it doesn't reside in a single brain, but across the network. A distributed consciousness, each member of the hive contributing a piece. One insect remembers locations, another calculates distances, another senses threats. Together, they are the mind. Could this be the pinnacle of evolution on this alternate Earth? Not one dominant species, but many, all linked together in layered societies of unparalleled complexity. You walk along the edge of the clearing and come upon something even stranger, a ring of stones, arranged in a spiral. At each turn, an object is placed. A dried beetle wing, a twisted twig, a discarded carapace. You kneel and study them. They appear symbolic. An offering? A message? You sense that this ring marks more than territory. It marks intention, some form of ritual. These insects may not speak, but they understand purpose, ceremony, perhaps even mourning. You look up and realize that the forest is full of such rings, subtle patterns hidden in plain sight. The implications are staggering. If insects evolved intelligence on this scale, would they eventually develop a culture as rich as ours? Would they build cities in the trees or beneath the earth? Would they create music, philosophy, mathematics? Or would they remain as they are now, guided by scent, pattern, and touch, brilliant in their difference from us? You step back from the clearing as the sun crests the trees. The hive continues its work, glowing faintly in the light. A living machine that thinks, feels, remembers. And as you retreat into the woods, you begin to wonder, in a world of such insect societies, what role would humans play? Would we collaborate, compete, or simply find new ways to survive? The answer, you sense, lies in the delicate dance of civilization, in the cities we might build or share in the shadows of wings. You leave behind the quiet rhythm of the hive and step into a long, sloping valley where morning mist still clings to the roots and leaves. The forest here is different. There's something unmistakably structured about the way the trees are spaced, the way the ground has been cleared. This is not untouched wilderness. It is cultivated land, not by human hands, but by something equally intelligent and perhaps older in its instincts. You pass rows of mushroom beds, stacked in terraces shaped by earth-moving insects. The soil has been carefully turned and shaded. Water is directed by shallow channels that glisten in the light, some dug by claw, others sealed with resin. You notice beetles rolling nutrient-rich dung into chambers beneath each crop. Nothing is wasted. Everything is part of a cycle. Above you, bees the size of ravens tend to a vertical garden growing on the bark of a colossal tree. Their legs carry pollen from one towering blossom to another, while small drones buzz around the base, sipping from broken fruit, recycling it back into the hive. The flowers themselves have evolved in tandem with their pollinators, larger, slower to wilt, releasing scent patterns tailored to insect senses. This is not farming as you know it. It's not about control. It's about collaboration.
It's not impersonal.
And then you see them. Humans. Several figures crouched beside a vine-covered wall, weaving together ropes made from spider silk and dried reeds. They are not building fences or machines. They are weaving communication. Across the valley, others respond, not with shouts, but by altering the pattern of silk in their own stations. It's a silent signal, visible from afar, a change in temperature, a warning of a predator, an invitation to share resources. This is how cooperation thrives in a world too loud for words. You walk into a settlement nestled against the base of a cliff. There are no stone towers, no metal frames. Instead, the city seems to emerge from the earth itself. Rooms are carved into the hillside like termite chambers, cooled by tunnel systems dug deep by burrowing insects. The walls breathe, alive with moss, lichen, and the hushed movement of small arthropods. Every crevice has a purpose. Even waste becomes fuel, composted by colonies of beetles who serve both sanitation and sustenance. You pass under an arch of hardened silk, where a gentle breeze flows up from below. It carries the scent of fermented honey, root stew, and dried leaves, the daily smells of a kitchen adapted to this world. Inside, humans and insects share space without fear. A worker ant, chest high to a person, carries cut branches into a storage alcove. A human child follows, placing pods of resin beside it. There is no alarm, no dominance, only rhythm. In the town square, if it can be called that, a wide, shaded platform spans the tops of ancient tree roots. Here, trade happens, not with coins, but with gifts. Bartered goods include beetle shell tools, honey mead in clay pots, and tightly woven spools of spider silk, stronger than any thread you've seen before. Communication is part gesture, part smell, part touch, and everything is slow, deliberate. This is a world without haste. You notice, too, the subtle changes in human biology. Their sense of smell is sharper, allowing them to track pheromones. Their ears are long and sensitive, attuned to the low frequencies of insect song. Their skin glows faintly with natural oils that mimic forest scents, a kind of camouflage by aroma. Their language isn't just vocal. It includes hums, taps, and synchronized breathing, echoing the rhythms of wings and footfalls. And above the village, woven between two trees like a hanging bridge, is a library. Not books, not words, but an archive of scent stones, porous, polished minerals infused with layered smells that only trained readers can decode. The villagers climb barefoot and sure, selecting stones from the shelves. Each one holds a memory, a message, a map, or a piece of lore. Stories aren't written here. They're inhaled. Even leisure here is different. In the afternoon, you find a group of people lying in a circle beneath a lattice of insect wings stretched like stained glass. The light filters through in colored patterns, and they chant softly, not to any god, but to the rhythm of the forest. They match their breath to the wingbeat of the cicadas, to the low thrum of the beetles in the roots. It's not performance, it's participation. You pause to take it in, the hum of cooperation between species, the symphony of movement and stillness, the absence of conquest. In your own world, humans rose to dominance by taming, altering, and often destroying the ecosystems around them. But here, they have risen by yielding, listening, and adapting. Even conflicts, when they arise, are solved differently. You witness a border ritual between two insect colonies who share a pollination zone. A group of humans, acting as intermediaries, arranges pollen samples in mirrored patterns on the forest floor. A group of signal ants, guided by scent, approaches and rearranges the pattern. If the changes are accepted, the border holds. If not, a third pattern is proposed. Violence is rare, too costly in a world so finely balanced. As you climb to the top of a watch platform made from fused branches and molted shells, the sun begins to set. Below, the valley glows with golden light. The insects return to their hives, their nests, their burrows. The humans gather their tools, offer thanks to the land, and settle in for a meal. And you sit there on that high perch, wondering how different your own world could have been. If humans had not declared themselves separate from the natural world, if they had instead stepped into its rhythm, its language, its patience, what kind of cities might we have built? What kind of harmony might we have known? As dusk deepens and the sky turns violet, you hear a distant sound, the overlapping songs of thousands of insects, calling not in chaos, but in chorus. And you know, this world is not ruled by dominance, but by mutual thriving. A civilization shaped not by force, but by coexistence. Evening settles gently over the valley. The light fades, not into silence, but into a deeper kind of sound, a layered hum that rises from every tree, every leaf, every shadowed patch of forest. You sit quietly at the edge of the watch platform, feeling the wood beneath your palms resonate with life. And then, as the final rays of sunlight vanish, the soundscape begins to unfold in full. It starts with a long, low whir, the deep vibrato of a giant cicada just beneath the canopy. Its song pulses in intervals, each one rippling outward like the tolling of a distant bell. Then another joins it, and another. Soon the forest becomes a living instrument, vibrating with overlapping voices, a resonant chord that swells and dips with each passing breath of wind. In the world you know, insects are often background noise, a high-pitched chirp, a quiet buzz. But here, sound is central. It is communication, navigation, warning, celebration. You close your eyes and listen. To your left, a chorus of night beetles begins their rhythmic tapping. Their thick, armored legs strike the trunks of hollow trees in repeated patterns. Each beat echoes slightly, producing a percussive melody like drums played through deep caverns. Some beats are sharp and staccato, others slow and pulsing. You realize that this is more than territory marking. It's a message, perhaps a call to others, perhaps a ritual. Above you, moths flutter in slow, wide loops, their wings creating a soft, steady whoosh, like leaves falling in reverse. You hear the creaking of their joints as they fold and unfold mid-air. Every pass releases a faint trail of pheromone that adds an invisible tone to the air, a scent song you cannot hear, but can almost feel on your skin. Farther in the distance, a colony of weaver ants performs a different kind of sound, the rustling of millions of feet moving in unison across a canopy bridge. The sound is crisp, like wind passing through brittle paper, but it's perfectly in sync. They move in patterns that create waves of rhythm, flowing up and down the branches, an auditory sculpture of organization. You shift slightly, and beneath you, the tree responds, not with groaning wood, but with resonance. Its bark is embedded with tunnels built by carpenter beetles, and the air moving through them turns the entire tree into a subtle wind instrument. The tones shift as the breeze changes direction, creating a song that drifts up through your seat, like a heartbeat made of sound. The ground has its own music. You hear it when you step off the platform and walk through the darkening forest. Each footfall is cushioned by damp soil and layered leaves, but below that, you feel vibration. Giant crickets, hidden beneath the roots, thrum their abdomens like plucked cello strings, some slow and deep, others fast and skittering. They don't sing in isolation. They respond to one another. You follow the pulses, realizing they form a map, a sound map of presence, absence, distance. It is here, in this world, that you begin to understand. In a realm of giant insects, the air is never empty. It is always filled with intention. You stop by a pool surrounded by reeds. Here, the aquatic insects begin their nightly chorus. Water striders glide in patterns that produce small ripples, and the surface tension carries their movement outward like Morse code. Beneath the water, broad-bodied water bugs click their shells against pebbles, each sound echoed and distorted by the slow-moving current. Suddenly, a flash, not of light but of sound made visible. Fireflies have taken to the air, their synchronized flashing accompanied by a faint buzz each time they ignite. The light is rhythmic, like a slow strobe, but the sound behind it is more delicate, the hum of their wings modulating ever so slightly as they communicate. 1,000 of them blink and hum together, creating a pulsing pattern in the dark, a symphony of bioluminescent rhythm. You watch as a small group of humans joins the fireflies. They stand silently, holding flat stones strung with chimes made from dried carapaces. Each movement they make sends a different tone into the air. The fireflies respond, adjusting their rhythm. It is a conversation between species, an exchange of song and light. And still the soundscape evolves. From above you hear a sudden roar, not of a beast, but of wings. A titan dragonfly passes low, its flight path carving a deep vacuum of silence that briefly hushes the forest. As it disappears, the sound rushes back in, louder, layered, alive. It's as if the dragonfly's passage reset the forest's tempo. Somewhere nearby, a warning call. A shrill whine from a mantid sentry perched high in the canopy. The frequency is high, almost beyond your hearing. A cluster of beetles responds instantly, freezing mid-motion. A moment passes. The forest holds its breath. Then, without visible threat, the mantid shifts, lowers its forearms, and the song resumes. The soundscape is more than music. It is memory. Many insects in this world use vibration not only to communicate, but to remember. You pass a nest mound built into a fallen log and place your hand against it. It vibrates subtly, the pattern repeating every few seconds. A memory encoded in rhythm, perhaps a history of migration, or a warning left behind by a vanished colony. You sit again, this time at the edge of a stream, where water beetles clatter and splash in playful motion. The reeds sway above, creating a hush like breathing. All around you the forest sings, a voice not of one creature, but of millions. It strikes you, quietly, that in your own world, much of this song has gone unheard. Masked by engines, lights, and walls. Here, it is everything. Insect societies evolved not only to survive, but to speak. Not with words, but with waves, with pulses, with the shared understanding of rhythm and space. And in that moment, you feel part of it. The vibrations in your chest match those in the ground. Your breath follows the tempo of wings overhead. You are no longer an observer. You are an instrument, a note in the great symphony of life. And as you rise, the question returns. In such a world of sound and subtlety, how do the food webs form? Who hunts? Who feeds? And how is life balanced when giants walk and fly among giants? That too waits in the dark. Just beyond the edge of the clearing, you step away from the stream and follow a narrow path where the hum of wings fades and a different atmosphere begins to take hold. The forest grows denser here, the shadows deeper, and the air is rich with scent. Not floral and light like before, but earthy, musky, laced with decay and movement. This is not the realm of harvesters or pollinators. This is where the true mechanics of survival play out. Here, the food chain is not a simple ladder, but a web, intricate, layered, and constantly shifting. You crouch behind a fallen log as a scene unfolds. A beetle the size of a basketball trundles through the undergrowth, its antennae probing the leaf litter. It pauses, sensing something. From beneath the soil, in one sudden motion, a trapdoor spider lunges, pulling the beetle downward into its burrow. The leaves settle. Silence returns. This is a world where size does not guarantee safety. Insects that are herbivorous must remain alert. Enormous walking sticks feed lazily on young leaves, blending perfectly with the trees, but not because they are invincible. Predators are everywhere. Mantises crouch beneath branches with folded limbs and unwavering stares. Assassin bugs wait in ambush. Even some butterflies, massive and beautiful, use their bright colors not only to attract mates, but to warn, "I am toxic. I am dangerous. Stay away." You cross a clearing and find yourself at the edge of a marshy depression. A group of dragonflies hovers low over the water. They are feeding, not on pollen, but on other insects. With speed that defies their size, they snatch wasps mid-air, crush them in strong mandibles, and consume them mid-flight. The wings of their prey fall like confetti, floating silently onto the surface of the pond. Beneath the water, another system exists. You watch as a shadow drifts slowly beneath the surface. It's a water scorpion, not a true scorpion, but a long-bodied insect with clawed front legs and a breathing siphon trailing from its abdomen. It glides with eerie grace before lashing out, capturing a frog-sized nymph and piercing it with its sharp proboscis. The pond, calm a moment ago, ripples with sudden stillness. Amphibians and small mammals in this world are not apex predators. In many cases, they are prey. You observe one such moment. A small rodent cautiously nibbling at seeds dropped near a hive mound. A moment later, it vanishes. seized by the coiled legs of a centipede hidden in the leaf litter. There's a scuffle, a shriek, then nothing. You begin to understand the structure of this ecosystem. At the bottom, decomposers, mites, fungi, larvae. Above them, the grazers, massive beetles, caterpillars, plant-eating ants. Then come the opportunists, scavenger cockroaches, soldier termites, omnivorous crickets. The predators are a league of their own. Dragonflies, mantids, giant wasps, ambush bugs. And above even them, the specialists. Spiders the size of wolves, parasitic wasps that lay their eggs inside larger prey, and hive-minded colonies that coordinate attacks on entire communities of smaller organisms. Each species is not only adapted for its role, it is vital. Remove one, and the balance shifts. You pass a termite mound, taller than you are. At its base, discarded shells, the remnants of a failed attack by rival ants. You see signs of war here, broken mandibles, splintered limbs, even the curled forms of fallen defenders. These aren't random skirmishes. They're battles for territory, for access to food, for space in a crowded world. But not all competition is violent. You spot a section of forest where carnivorous plants have evolved to work alongside insects. Enormous pitcher plants stand like vats, exuding sweet aromas to lure in unsuspecting flyers. Once an insect falls inside, the plant's slippery walls trap it, and digestive enzymes slowly do the rest. But nearby, beetles and ants harvest the overflow, feeding on parts the plant discards or intercepting prey just before it falls. Symbiosis is everywhere. You cross into an open meadow where herds of grazing locusts move in slow procession. Each is larger than a sheep, their legs armored, their jaws grinding steadily. Above them, a flock of hoverflies circles, not attacking, but watching. You realize the flies aren't predators. They're acting like shepherds, responding to scents released by the locusts to guide the herd toward fresh growth. In return, the flies lay eggs in the softer dung left behind, securing a nutrient-rich place for their young. This balance, predator and prey, scavenger and host, parasite and protector, has created a system both brutal and breathtaking. And yet, there is still a top. You hear it before you see it. A deep buzzing, a slow rhythm like the beat of massive wings against thick air. Then it appears, an insect unlike the others, a wasp, but unlike any you've seen. Its thorax gleams like black glass, its stinger curved like a scythe. Nearly the size of a car, it moves with weight and power, ignoring the smaller creatures below. Other insects scatter as it approaches. You stay hidden beneath a branch, holding your breath. It lands near a hive and pauses, not to feed, but to inspect. It is a queen scout, perhaps, searching for a new place to found a colony, or worse, a raider, marking this territory for future conquest. Even in a world shaped by cooperation and ecological nuance, power still asserts itself, and power here can fly. As you watch it vanish into the canopy, the forest begins to return to motion. A beetle rolls its prize back into a tunnel. Ants resume their trail. Somewhere, a mantis finishes its meal and climbs upward. Satisfied, you walk slowly now, feeling the weight of this knowledge. In your own world, food chains are often simplified. Predator eats prey, life continues. But here, every link is more tightly bound, every role more vital. Every death, every birth, every shift of energy flows through a system that has been perfected by time and tension. And as you reach the edge of the clearing, the air begins to change again. Cooler, wetter. The scent of salt reaches your nose. You hear the distant call of gull-like insects and the low hum of life on the coast. There, in the swamps and shallows, another ecosystem waits, one even stranger, shaped by water, wind, and the insects that rule them. You follow the scent of salt and peat as the dense forest thins into tangled roots and soft mud. The trees grow stilt-like here, their trunks rising from shallow, brackish water. Vines hang low, and the air feels thicker, alive with mist and the soft chorus of clicking, chirping, and bubbling sounds. This is the edge of the sea, but it is not the sea you know. You've arrived at the realm of coastal marshes and tidal swamps, where freshwater and saltwater blend, and where the insect world continues its vast dominion. You step cautiously onto a patch of firm land, a mound of interwoven roots and algae, and pause to listen. The ecosystem here is woven from water and breath. At the base of the trees, enormous water bugs paddle slowly through the shallows. They are shaped like shields, their backs armored and sleek, each front leg curved like a sickle. You watch as one waits near a cluster of reeds, motionless as a stone. Then it strikes, a lightning-fast jab that snatches a fish the size of your hand. With practiced ease, it pierces the fish and injects digestive fluids, turning flesh to liquid within seconds. The water bug floats silently as it feeds, ripples fanning out around its massive, glistening body. You step onto a patch of floating vegetation and peer into the water. Below the surface, something stirs. A centipede, longer than your arm and adapted for life in both air and water, slinks through the murky depths. Its legs move in coordinated waves, propelling it through underwater grasses, its antennae waving slowly in search of prey. Then, a rustle behind you. You turn and spot a trio of shrimp-like insects crawling from a rotting log. Their carapaces are covered in algae, their legs delicately adapted to cling to both water and wood. They click quietly to one another, creating a rhythm that seems to echo across the surface of the water. On higher branches above, dragonflies rest with outstretched wings, their bodies slick with condensation. But these are not the same dragonflies you saw inland. These are coastal variants, broader winged, adapted for windy sea air, their eyes reflecting the gray-blue tones of the ocean. One lifts off, its wings beating in slow, graceful arcs, and it vanishes over the swaying reeds toward the distant glint of open water. You follow a narrow causeway of twisted roots toward the shoreline. Here, the forest gives way to tidal flats, wide expanses of sand, shell, and shallow pools that stretch out toward the glittering sea. And covering nearly every inch of these flats is movement. Swarms of enormous sand fleas leap in arcs across the surface. Some are solitary. Others gather in rhythmic pulses, bouncing in sync with the tide. Their bodies are mottled in brown and gold, and their jumps send sprays of water into the air. Among them, horseshoe crabs crawl slowly, their bodies scaled up to the size of sleds. Their tails leave deep furrows in the sand, and small scavenging beetles hitch rides on their backs, leaping off whenever food is found. The two species exist in easy partnership, one disturbing the mud, the other devouring what's unearthed. Then farther out, something truly vast. You see a shadow move just beneath the surface of the sea, accompanied by the occasional flash of glossy shell. It surfaces, slowly, smoothly, and you see the ridged body of a sea scorpion, or Eurypterid. Longer than a canoe, it glides through the shallow water like a ghost. Though extinct in your world, here it thrives, reigning as a coastal apex predator. Its claws are enormous, but slow-moving, used more to corral than to slash. The sea scorpion passes close enough for you to see barnacle-like organisms living on its back and tiny shrimp darting in and out of the crevices in its shell. Even this giant carries a world upon its shoulders. The water around the tide pools foams with the motion of smaller insects. You spot a group of larval stage creatures, transparent, eel-like, and glowing faintly. They congregate in clusters, feeding on drifting algae, while nearby, predatory diving beetles cut through the water with rapid kicks, sending the larval clouds scattering. As the tide begins to rise, new activity stirs. From holes in the sand, massive antlion larvae emerge. They have created shallow pit traps near the edge of the surf, and as small sand crabs stumble near, The antlions flick grains of sand upward to pull them in. Their curved jaws clamp down with terrifying speed, and another meal disappears beneath the surface. You climb a driftwood ridge and gaze out to sea. A low fog hangs over the water, and in the distance you see long-winged insects rising from the waves. Coastal moths, each as wide as a glider, adapted to feed on floating plankton and nesting on jagged cliffs. They look like birds from afar, but when they come close, their antennae and scaled wings give them away. Behind you, inland, the swamp begins to glow. Thousands of swamp fireflies blink in slow rhythm across the marsh. Their light is refracted by water droplets, turning the entire bog into a field of floating stars. Frogs, small compared to the insects, sing from high perches, their calls echoing like soft gongs. Even here, amphibians must adapt to live in an insect-dominated world. You descend once more to the water's edge and run your hand through the cold surf. The sand is filled with burrows, homes for salt-tolerant worms, filter-feeding insect larvae, and beetles that breathe through tiny snorkel-like tubes. Every grain of this beach seems alive. And above it all, flying in lazy arcs along the coast, are clouds of coastal gnats and mosquitoes, larger, more sluggish, but still drawn to warmth. You pull up your collar and move inland, leaving the shoreline behind as the wind picks up and the tide begins to rise. The ocean, vast and mysterious, has not stopped the insects. It has simply given them new space to thrive, new forms to take. From tidal pools to open waves, the insect world has filled every corner of this imagined earth. As you walk back into the forest, salt still on your lips and sand clinging to your boots, you begin to wonder what happens when climates shift, when water rises or retreats, when temperature changes reshape the delicate web of life. Because even in a world of giants, nothing stays the same forever. You return inland as dusk gives way to night. The forest is quieter now, wrapped in darkness and the low pulsing rhythms of nocturnal life. But as you walk, the air begins to shift, not just in temperature, but in tone. The breeze carries a different scent, drier, sharper, with hints of dust and resin. The forest thins again, and the path you follow gradually rises toward an overlook, where a broader view of this insect world stretches before you, and you begin to notice the signs of change. The trees here are more widely spaced. The air is cooler and less humid than in the coastal swamp. The insects are still enormous, but different. Their wings are stiffer, their bodies thinner. You see a beetle whose shell is paler and matte, better suited to reflect heat than absorb it. Nearby, a species of moth folds its wings tightly when resting, tucking beneath rocky ledges to escape the sun. You are witnessing evolution in motion. Even in this alternate Earth, where insects rule and ecosystems are vast, interwoven, and ancient, the world does not sit still. Climates shift, tectonic plates drift, ice ages come and go. Rainforests give way to grasslands, which in turn surrender to desert, and the insects change with it. You kneel to examine a cluster of burrows carved into hardened soil. A species of digger wasp has made its home here. Unlike its tropical relatives, this one is solitary, its wings shortened and legs thicker, adapted for walking across hard ground rather than gliding through humid air. Its prey is different too, quick-footed sand crickets that dart between scrub brush and burrow deep to escape predators. The wasp is no less formidable, only different. Farther along you find a grove of skeletal trees, tall but leafless, their branches dry and twisted. But they are not dead. They host a colony of bark-mining insects that have evolved to live entirely beneath the surface of the trees, never emerging. You touch the trunk and feel the faint tickle of movement inside. The tree is not just shelter, it is ecosystem, and all around you, the weather is changing. Clouds thicken and shift rapidly overhead. A hot wind picks up from the north, carrying dry particles across the ridge. Below, in the distance, you see a once lush valley beginning to brown. Trees are dropping their leaves earlier. The undergrowth has thinned. You spot fewer pollinators here, but more scavengers, more decomposers. The balance is tilting. Climate change, even in this world, is a powerful force. You walk through a canyon where the walls shimmer with fossilized insect wings. These are ancestors, echoes of forms long extinct. Some resemble dragonflies, others strange hybrids with long tails and segmented wings. Their diversity tells a story. Not all species survived the shift. Even in a world tailored for their dominance, insects face extinction, adaptation, or transformation. Evolution favors the ready. You come across a colony of ants that live not in mounds, but in layers of sediment along the canyon wall. Their tunnels are shallow, designed to capture and store morning dew. They herd tiny, sap-feeding mites that excrete sweet fluid, much like aphids, a portable food source. These ants are less aggressive than their jungle cousins, but more clever, better planners. In harsh climates, strength yields to strategy, and even the giants are shrinking. You spot a mantis perched on a rock, sunning itself. It's smaller than the ones you've seen before, lean, quiet, its colors muted to blend with the stones. Its hunting style is different too. Instead of ambushing from branches, it waits motionless against the rock, striking only when the heat of its prey triggers movement sensors in its legs. These adaptations aren't just physical, they are behavioral. In another part of the plateau, you observe insects that hunt at night to avoid daytime heat. Some have developed larger eyes for low-light vision. Others rely on vibration and scent trails that linger longer in cool air. In the distance, you see the glow of bioluminescent markings used for nighttime coordination. A new language shaped by necessity. But change does not only pressure individuals, it transforms systems. You find a once thriving wetland that is now a cracked basin. The dragonflies that once soared here have moved on, replaced by migratory species that follow seasonal rainfall patterns. Their eggs are laid in mobile water sacs carried by host beetles, a traveling nursery. Elsewhere, a fungus that once grew on tree roots now blooms in shaded rock crevices, drawing in heat-tolerant insects that spread its spores across the dry plains. And the hives, those elegant societies of mutual purpose, must also adapt. You discover a hive built entirely underground, far from the reach of rising temperatures. Its tunnels are deeper, its ventilation systems more elaborate. The hive sends scouts not just for food, but for climate signals, soil moisture, fungal bloom cycles, and wind speed. Every decision is built on readings of the environment. The hive is not just reacting, it is predicting. Still, not all change is gentle. A storm approaches. Not a quiet rain, but a wind-lashed wall of heat and dust. You watch it roll across the horizon like a living curtain, bending trees, lifting dry leaves into spirals. Insects vanish into burrows, clinging to leaves, huddling in cracks. You do the same, sheltering beneath a ledge as the wind howls overhead. And in that moment, you see what this world has always known, that survival is not about permanence. It's about rhythm, response, flexibility. When the storm passes, the forest does not look the same. Some branches are broken, pollen has been stripped, pools have dried, but the insects reemerge. Ants reclaim their trails, bees find new blossoms, beetles crawl from under rocks and begin cleaning the debris. You rise from your shelter and walk out into the sun, feeling the heat on your skin, the scent of rain-dampened dust in your lungs. You look around and understand. This world, even one of insect giants, is not static. It breathes and bends. It falls and rises. It transforms, just like your own world once did, and still does. And yet, for all its change, it holds one constant truth, that life finds a way to move forward, always adapting, always rebuilding. Somewhere ahead, beyond this ridge and through the trees, you sense another shift, not in climate this time, but in fate. A reminder that even the grandest worlds can be fragile, and that their reign, too, can end. The wind has settled. The air, though warm, carries the scent of fresh leaves, damp bark, and something else. A hint of ash, as if somewhere far off something is burning. You walk slowly now, through the recovering forest, and the question echoes in your mind like a quiet drumbeat. How stable is this world, really? For all its towering beetles, coordinated hives, and thunderous wings, you begin to see its vulnerabilities, the fine, nearly invisible threads that keep it together. Every giant insect, every adapted plant, every rhythm in this place exists because of delicate balances. Oxygen levels, humidity, temperature, soil chemistry, and when even one of these threads shifts, the entire system feels it. You pass through a grove where the trees seem healthy, tall and green, but silent. No buzzing, no wing beats, no movement. Then you see the bodies. Dozens of giant leafhoppers lie still on the forest floor, their legs curled inward. They're not injured. They're empty, starved. The leaves they fed on are intact but chemically changed. A fungal infection, perhaps. A subtle change in sap composition. Something small that spread like a whisper through the roots, affecting the taste, the nutrients. Enough to disrupt the entire population that depended on it. A single pathogen, a subtle mutation, and the balance tilts. You walk on, and the silence lingers. Up ahead, a stream trickles where a river once roared. The water level has dropped, revealing the stone bed beneath. Here, too, life has receded. Water bugs cluster in shrinking pools. Predatory diving beetles move slowly, almost sluggishly, as though confused by the loss of current. Dragonflies circle lower than usual, their wings twitching, perhaps searching for food that isn't there. In a world dominated by insects, so finely tuned to their environment, even minor fluctuations can ripple outward like shockwaves. You climb a rise and look out over a wide meadow, or what remains of it. Patches of scorched earth break the sea of grass. Smoke curls from the remains of a hive mound, a sprawling colony that once housed tens of thousands of ants and beetles. Now it is cracked, blackened, and lifeless. The fire may have started naturally, a lightning strike or a spontaneous burn ignited by the dense, oxygen-rich air, but the result is the same. Collapse. Other creatures flee. A line of beetles scurries from the ruins, each carrying larvae or food. A pair of humans moves through the smoke, covering their faces with fabric woven from moss and silk. They carry resin jugs, perhaps to save what they can, to douse embers, or to collect what remains. Even in a world of harmony and resilience, no ecosystem is immune to disruption. You think of your own world, of Earth as it is today. You think of the insects you know, the bees in danger, the butterflies vanishing from fields, the forests thinning. In both worlds, fragility hides behind abundance. You step down into a shallow basin and find a quiet miracle, a newly forming colony. A single queen ant, easily the size of your forearm, digs methodically into the soft soil. Around her, a handful of workers follow her scent trail, gathering leaf fragments and searching for food. Their steps are deliberate. Their purpose is clear. It is a reminder. Life begins again, even after collapse, even after fire or drought, even after the great titans fall. Life returns, slowly, carefully, differently. In the canopy above, you see a swarm of moths dancing in the fading light. They are smaller than those you saw before, perhaps a different species, better suited to the shifting conditions. They drift like floating petals, quiet and glowing with soft patterns. Further down the path, you find a spider's web, vast, stretched between two ancient trees. In its center, the spider waits. It is not large, no longer the monstrous predator of earlier generations. Its size has diminished, but its web is complex, geometric, glistening with dew. A small beetle buzzes into it, and the spider moves, quick and precise. Adaptation again. Not just survival, but recalibration. You reflect on what it would take for such a world to endure. Not strength, not size, but balance, awareness, flexibility. Because even giants can fall. You find yourself in a clearing at twilight. The trees cast long shadows. A breeze returns, cool, fragrant with pollen. In the distance, you hear the hum of wings returning, a new rhythm rising. Somewhere, another hive is being built, another song is being sung. You sit on a moss-covered stone and close your eyes, listening. This world may not be real, but it is possible, at least in the imagination. It is a world that once almost was. It reminds you that scale doesn't define dominance, and that power without harmony cannot last. Insects ruled this earth before. They might have ruled it still. But all kingdoms, even those of buzzing wings and shining carapaces, are held together by invisible threads. You rise as the stars begin to blink overhead. A final wing beat stirs the air, and the darkness deepens. And as you take your final steps through this imagined world, you know it will remain, not in the soil or sky, but in the fragile and infinite reaches of what might have been. The path fades behind you now, and the world of giants, of buzzing wings, towering hives, and shimmering carapaces drifts into memory. You've walked through forests where dragonflies filled the skies like gliders, and stood among humans who lived not apart from nature, but woven into its rhythms. You've felt the breath of change ripple through insect empires, watched civilizations rise from resin and root, and seen how even the grandest ecosystems must bend to time and chance. Perhaps it was just a dream, this world of impossible scale and delicate harmony, or perhaps it was something more. A vision of how life might adapt, survive, and thrive in ways far different from our own. The truth is, Earth has always held such wonders. Giant insects really did walk its surface. They lived, grew, and disappeared, and in their place new life rose. But the story they left behind, the one you followed tonight, remains. A reminder that all things change, that survival often favors the small and the patient, and that imagination lets us explore paths evolution never took. So rest now, and let your thoughts drift on translucent wings. Let the forests hum, the rivers whisper, and the skies of this world carry you. And, as you drift into sleep, remember, the story of our world is always unfolding, even in dreams.